It is with open and thankful hearts that we dedicate this episode of ScapeChatz to Peter Frampton.
Shadows grow so long before my eyes, and they're moving across the page. Suddenly the day turns into night, far away from the city. But don't hesitate, 'cause your love won't wait. Hey, hey, hey. Ooh, baby, I love
Welcome to ScapeChatz episode 43. I'm Alan, and I'm joined by the final bug to infest this podcast once and for all, Magellan. This week we watched season 4, episodes 14 and 15, Twice Shy and Mental as Anything. How you doing, Magellan?
Is this sex?
Oh my god, is this sex? Is that an actual quote from the episode, or you're
Yeah.
just goofing?
It's a real line that was said in this real episode of Farscape.
That's really real. Oh yeah, you're right, Talika. Thanks, Talika, the villain of the year in the final bug episode of Farscape. We did it, everybody! Yay!
I hope so. I hope it's the final episode.
I think it's not the final episode. It's the final bug episode. I think someone told us that is true. Yes. Twice Shy was written by David Peckinpah, directed by Kate Woods, and it aired January 24th, 2003.
Hello, I'm David Peckinpah.
I thought you were going to reference the acclaimed film director Sam Peckinpah, but no. He did like old, like really violent films in the 70s. David Peckinpah is new to the show. He also directed an episode later on called We're So Screwed Part 1.
Oh my god, sorry. I'm looking at David Peckinpah's page on the Farscape Encyclopedia Project, and his birth name is David Edward Samuel Ernest Peckinpah III.
Oh my god.
He was born
so good.
He was born in Fresno.
But he died in 2006. Oh, David Peckinpah. Oh, you actually made an okay
You brought
episode.
us so much joy. You shine so bright in our hearts.
Especially
It's
your
true.
name.
You brought me a lot of joy just now.
David Edward Samuel Ernest Peckinpah IV is actually in real estate. Twice Shy. It was a good time. It was we kind of came to this agreement before recording. It felt like a weird throwback to all of the bug episodes that we've made popular with how much we dislike them on this podcast. That's like become our big thing.
Well, all the bug episodes and all the we brought somebody on board. They're the thing that's happening. Whoopsie.
And they don't even try to get too complex with it in this episode. They're just like, she's a spider and she's she makes people think bad stuff.
All right, guys. What does she do this time? I don't know. She takes their best traits. Yeah, that works.
She takes their passive skills and replaces them with unrepeatable active skills. It's a deep cut for people. No, yeah, that's kind of the gist of the whole episode. Is they're like, hey, we should. What are they? They're like buying something else from some traders that are on board. Oh, star charts. And then they're like, hey, we'll give you 100 credit. If you give us another 100 credits, we'll give you this girl. And then they get... Also, Naranti does the bartering, which is confusing. Mm-hmm. It's like, Naranti, why are you suddenly the competent economic advisor for the group?
Yeah.
That's a really...
Why is it her and Rigel who are our diplomatic unit?
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's very funny. And then... They bring on what's her name again? Jelani? Talika. Jelani's... Someone's gonna tell me who Jelani is. That's another character. Ugh. There's so many blank names in the show.
You thinking of Jelena?
Who's Jelena?
The PK Tech girl. R.I.P.
There you go. Oh, nice.
The R.I.P.
Who's
Tech
Galena? Ooh, you did it! Ooh, kill him! Ooh, he did it! R.I.P. Tech girl. Ooh, that's fun to say. Talika's the first person of color that I remember being on this show.
Yeah.
I know that's not true. There's no way that's accurate, right?
Well, you're forgetting entire episode of Jeremiah Crichton.
How am I?
That was the whole thing.
Oh my god, you're right. You're totally right. I'm sorry, You're right. Those orange dressed people. Yeah.
So they're just doing that thing again that annoys me when Farscape does it, where it's they look like a human, but they're a totally different alien race. And it was a big deal that humans and Sebaceans are so similar, but this is not on anybody's radar. Whoopsie. Sorry. She's black, and that's enough to make you think that
she's an alien?
An alien and different?
That's not cool.
Come on for doing it.
What are you doing? There are like plenty of people of color in Australia. Like Lonnie Tupu is of Samoan descent, if I'm not mistaken, and it's like, dude has darker skin. Like, you've seen people with dark skin before. Come on, they're just people.
Yeah,
they can be humans or just Sebaceans.
Yeah.
But I think, like, when it comes to peacekeepers, I would imagine that they tend to prefer lighter skinned folk because of the like connections to Nazis and Aryans
sort of
and whatnot.
Subliminal like race thing. Yeah,
but there are definitely it makes plenty of sense for there to be Sebacean people of color, because it's like, no, they were probably like the poor people or the non-peacekeeper Sebaceans,
Yeah.
But she's not a Sebacean. She's a spiderling, I think.
Yeah, I don't... She's their effects budget.
She's the dog from Crichton Kicks. Oh, no, that's really unfair to call a person a dog. But, like, she's, like, like, when she becomes a spider, she is totally the, like, hey, there's the money.
Yep. There's the thing we spent on. They've done that more and more, because the other thing from last week, the what? The Shriek? The Schleck? The Schwook? The
Scree?
Screeth. That was also CG.
No, what? The Power Rangers guy?
No, there were parts where he was CG.
Sure, I believe that.
I think.
It makes sense.
Anyway, they're in this kind of mode now, visually, where it's starting to look less and less like the late 90s, early 2000s look that I like, and it's moving into that mid 2000s look that I think
that
is
everyone hates.
Hot garbage.
It's because CG is becoming a more common thing, and so they're kind of like leaning into it a little bit too much.
Yeah,
and people like Chronicles of Riddick is always my like classic example of what that looks like, or like those types of films. Dark City, although Dark City's got pretty good effects, but people immediately when we talk about like mid 2000s CG aesthetic should know what we're talking about if you watch this show and watch similar stuff.
Yeah.
Chiana falls in love with her though, which is pretty neat. And then it's like, is Chiana like cool pansexual pizza pie, or is she just being hypnotized? Like, make your choice, Farscape.
Yeah.
You can't have both.
That was I
think she's the first one.
Yeah, that was part of my problem with this episode. So I think on the whole, I liked it because it had that vibe of like, yeah, classic Farscape episode that I don't have to really pay that much attention to. Not that that's how I watch but I mean just like, I can throw this on and veg, kind of, because it feels so classic. Right. So I liked that, and the experience of watching it was fine, even if it was like pretty slow and super weirdly paced. But the Chiana stuff, at first, at the beginning of this episode, it's like, okay, I see what you're doing here. Chiana's the only one standing up for this girl who's imprisoned, and it kind of makes sense because we're seeing Chiana's heart come out in this, and her tendencies that she's shown in previous episodes to be kind of a warrior on behalf of women, especially. We saw that in the one that I really hated with the engineer who was
PK Tech Girl.
No, not PK Tech Girl.
The intersex character?
We just watched it. Not the intersex character, but also the one we just watched with the crabs.
Kubai Clam.
Kubai Clam. It has clams, not crabs. There was a different episode that had crabs. This is Farscape.
Oh my god.
So we see that's kind of coming out, and we're re-examining it. And I had the hope that, okay, this episode, it's going to be a little more front and center, this whole Chiana thing. It's not going to be the C plot like it was pretty much every time we've seen it happen. So that was the case. At first, they bring this person on board. Chiana's having these conversations of like, hey, you can hang out. We're cool. We're friends. And then it kind of gets sexy. And you're like, oh, this is actually really interesting that Chiana is pansexual personal pan pizza, if you want to use such a term rather than just saying pansexual.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to stick with.
I do. Okay, that's fair. You do you can make your own decision.
Yeah. So at first it's like, okay, Chiana seems pansexual or bisexual, at least.
Yeah.
That seems pretty cool. And now we have this conflict of like, she's sexually attracted to this girl, but she's also trying to like not take advantage of this girl who has had this prisoner experience and Chiana's trying to like save her, but also not save her and just be supportive. And like, how does Chiana help herself? Right. That's kind of what it's setting up with this character.
Yes.
You can see that Chiana sees herself in this character, but then this character becomes like a spider that make her extra horny and then not horny. And so you're right. That question of like, is this her true sexuality, or is it that the thing is heightening her sexuality?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably as simple as like, we've clearly seen her flirt with girls before, and I think it's as simple as like they're heightening it. But it's still like, it just feels weird that like the whole thing is, like we said, is this villain is taking everyone's like trait in the classic sense of the term and kind of like playing with it and turning it off or on as needed. So like they make Dargo really angry, and they make John really hopeless instead of hopeful, and they make, you know, Rigel very not greedy at all, which is kind of funny. And then it's like, Chiana, like, we're gonna make you she's manipulative basically, but in like ways that are keyed into each person's sort of like role on the show, which I think is interesting in a metatextual way. But with Chiana, it just feels weirdly manipulative, and it's like she doesn't get to like be herself a lot of times. Like a lot of times she's been like possessed a lot on this show is what I'm getting.
Yeah, that's interesting, the metatextual piece of it, because you're right, it is an episode that operates in that space of, what if we had an episode where the character's key traits were reversed or removed? I want to see that. What would that look like? That's probably how this started, I'm guessing, to some extent.
Yeah.
Because we've seen other episodes where it's like, what if they switched? Or what if, like, this single person had a shift? But not an episode where it's like, what if everybody lost their, quote, best trait? And that works on the metatextual level, like you're saying, but on the textual level, very hard to justify. I'm not really buying it. And it rings false to me that Chiana's best trait is that she's very horny.
Yeah.
Because
you go.
Because that's not a positive. I'm not saying that like being a sexual being or like having your sexuality being central to your identity is bad. I'm saying that framing is inherently kind of negative and taking power away from Chiana, because it's brought out in the girl moving on her and bringing it out in her, and then Chiana tests if it's still there by saying to Dargo, like, Dargo, kiss me, you know,
grab my boobies.
Yeah. And so it is that she's in that kind of passive role, whereas other characters, they're kind of more active traits, like Dargo's anger or John's hope or Aaron's self-control. These are all things that the characters are exerting. They're able to exert these traits in a certain way. And Chiana can exert her sexuality. That is a key thing that's brought up around her a lot. But there is also that kind of negative framing that comes from social biases around sexually active women that makes it kind of hard to interpret this episode and understand how it was intended without feeling like it's doing a disservice to Chiana's character.
Absolutely. And it goes to show that we care enough about this character that we're like, you can like just give her the episode where she has that control, and that this isn't her only thing. Because like you said earlier, her thing to me has always been that she has the heart, and she has the like care for the people who other people don't care about, like the underdog and the weak one and the woman and the, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like the person in the situation who is told all their life that, yes. Which is the show. Like, it's a show about outcasts. And, like, she is, like, the epitome of those people because of where she came from and how she exists. And it's like, no, the show just kind of engages with her on a, like, she's way into sex kind of level. Which is also interesting, but I don't think they do it well. And in this episode in particular.
Yeah, and it's just cheap. It's just cheap to keep doing this thing where, like, we brought on this person. Oh, no, turns out this person is, like, a crazy spider. I think at one point John even says, like, let's hope she doesn't pull a Troutix.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You can't,
totally does.
You can't say, let's hope this thing from 2 seasons ago, another episode doesn't happen on my TV show, because I don't want you to be that aware of the fact that you're on a Frelling TV show that uses these patterns over and over again. And so it's so cheap to do that and to set us up with this idea that Chiana's going to have a difficult emotional struggle with, like, how do you bring this person on board? How do you wrestle with the fact that she was a prisoner, that she was raped by these pirate guys, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And what do you do for a person who's in that situation? Do you have the capacity to even help, because that kind of thing is going to reveal that you have problems going on that, you maybe Chiana as a character hasn't been able to self-reflect and process and really own the fact that there are things that she deals with along these lines all the time that the other characters aren't necessarily seeing. So you set us up with that possibility of having a really cool introspective story about Chiana, and then you say, but instead she was totally wrong to take pity on this person or to try to help this person because this person was a secret space spider.
The ultimate sadness of that for me was the reveal at the end of like, hey, why? Because they never ever on this show get into the why the villain is bad. It almost always is like, oh, the villain's bad because they had a bad set of circumstances or they're just an evil person.
Yeah.
And when they talk to the spider and they're like, hey, why do you want to kill everyone on the ship? And she's like, I'm just hungry. You're like, that was it? You put these characters through so much because you were hungry. Like, what are the circumstances of tormented space that exist where someone comes on just because they're looking for a quick bite to eat and they're going to like go through all these hoops and they could have just like singled y'all out and eaten you? Like, why did you have to do all of this? Why specifically did you have to break these characters down by their tropes? Again, this time I'm referring to it in like a textual way of like, why did you have to do all of this if all it led to was, hey, I really wanted to kill all of you and knock you out and like eat your existence.
Yeah.
It bummed me out for that reason.
Yeah, it bummed me out too.
And then, you were also talking about how John points out that he's in a show when they're looking for the spider and she's invisible. He actually says something along the lines of like, the bad guys can always see me. Which is like John just knows that he always is surrounded by characters, like villains who are like invisible or have like stealth ways of seeing him that he can't see. He's like, oh, they're going to come behind me and hit me. This is what's going to happen. Like, he just knows at this point. Mm-hmm. And it's both like funny and then also annoying because it's like, oh my God, John, you're on a show, please.
Yeah, the line is he's going up to kill Talika.
Yep.
And he says, I'm never going to make it. Then he says, I know you can see me. Bad guys always see me because my plans suck. People die. Yep. It's always a mess.
That's the show, though. Yeah. Come on, John. We like that stuff.
I kind of like that. Like, I can jive with that more than him saying, oh, I hope she doesn't pull a Traltix. That's not a thing. You can't say pull a Traltix as if it was just like a thing that happened.
Well, because pulling a Traltix is referring to a specific episode where I was saying like my plans suck is like something that someone in real life could say. It's like, oh, every time I try to make something happen, it goes badly. And that's just a sign of like low self-confidence, is identifying your flaw and like gloating about your flaws. But hey, this episode is all over the place. Real quickly, just a couple more things. There's a diagnosin that helps them out at one point that tells them that how to beat Talika, which was like, hey, Badoopu.
Yeah, a little bit.
I love me a good diagnosin. It's nice to know that Tokat wasn't the only one, though. I will never forget Tokat and their beautiful, beautiful singing voice. Very, very funny moment when Rigel farts at one point and nobody says anything. It was like hell hath frozen over. They made a Rigel farts joke and then didn't have anyone go, oh, it was like, no, dead silence, nothing. They just all look at him like, why did you do that? It's like really good. It's a very on point moment. And then there's the you are food I eat. And then, Crichton, whatever, saves the day, beats the bad guy. And then once again, just does a one-liner. I forget what this one-liner was, but he always has one of those. That's kind of becoming his thing and kind of always was his thing.
A one-liner when he kills the bad guy?
Yeah. He like says something. Or like when in the Lava's a Many Splendored thing, when Dargo's like, get ahead of something, and then he knocks the guy's head off or something. He likes his one-liner.
Yeah, this one he says, along came a spider, exploded beside her.
Yep.
And then he faints.
Yeah, he faints, exactly. And okay, so the last thing we got to talk about in this episode is the ending.
You want to do a read of it?
Yes. Do you have any idea what you've done?
You won the coin toss.
But we lost, didn't we?
Aaron, it's over.
So your mind is now so full of this dread that you can't even see straight. Is that it?
Move on, Aaron.
You see, I did everything I could to keep us together. I did exactly what you told me to do, and the whole time, you have been cheating.
Yeah, I'm a coward. Move on. It's over.
No, I'm going to tell you how this is going to go from now on. You are going to stop sniffing this dread.
Shut up.
Don't you tell me to shut up.
Pilot, my comms are a bit buggy. Can you test the system, please? Yes, Commander. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You want to do it?
No, yours is good. I like yours.
Yes, Commander. That will take all... Nope, that's Scorpius. Moya will die. Okay, I got it. Yes, Commander. But that... Fuck. Hold on, I got it. It's a lot of editing from me. Yes, Commander, but that will take all comms offline for about 30 microns. I thought so. That'll be fine. Thank you. Shut up and listen. Scorpius is here, looking for the key to what is inside my head. Neural chips, Aurora chair, threatening Earth. None of it works because he does not understand.
Stop using him as an excuse.
Please. You're the key, my Achilles. You. Figures that one out. The world and all that's in it is nothing. He will use you and the baby, and I will not be able to stop him.
So you think he's been using the comms? Look what it's done to you. You're completely paranoid.
Pilot, this is Scorpius, are we having a problem with the comms? I was just checking them. Some slight irregularity, but they appear to be functioning normally.
So it's over.
It's over.
There's nothing more between us.
Nothing. Then they make out.
Oh, I love it. It's gooey and delicious.
Yeah, that was cool.
That scene made it really feel like all of this back and forth this season with their romance is like finally, it's going where I wanted it to.
When I started watching this episode, I had the thing in my head that I was going to say when we recorded ScapeChatz, which was that in the first couple seasons of Farscape, I always celebrated the John and Aaron relationship for not jerking us around. I said that a lot.
Right.
And then I was like, you know what? Now, season 4, they're jerking us around. They're doing all this nonsense. They're not cutting to the chase. I'm really annoyed. And then by the end of the episode, they did this. And I was like, okay, that was the last moment you could have done it. But you did it. I'm on board again. Here I am. Don't frill me, Farscape.
I'm looking at you, Farscape. Don't frill me.
Please.
And then Aaron's not in the next episode.
Yep. She's just, no girls are in the next episode at all.
Which
Sorry.
is great because next week we're gonna get the all girls episode. So
right,
yeah.
But so it's like Scorpius is not gonna fall for that, you know?
Absolutely not. Right?
Just because John and Aaron are like, we're breaking up, doesn't mean Scorpius isn't gonna know that John loves her.
Dear diary, John and Aaron broke up today. My plans have been ruined. I'm still on the ship, this living ship full of idiots that I hate.
Sakozu seems really hot. I like her.
I'm down to smash. By the way, you mentioned to me recently, I'm just outing you, your private text to me, your friend. You said, we need to talk about Sakozu's huge boobs. Dude, Sakozu does not have big boobs. She has boob highlights drawn on.
Yeah. That's more what I meant. It's just that costume is like all about boob.
Right.
And there's no other like material there really.
Exactly. It's like Jules was even more so. Jules' original costume was like, hey, here's the chest and here's other.
I think this is more so, my man.
You think so?
I think
we'll do some comparison shots after this.
Yep, that's what we'll do with our time.
Comparison shots.
Scorpius he's not dumb.
Nope.
Why is he even there? Why is he still on the ship if he's bothering us so much? I still don't.
Next episode, him and Braca take over in one foul swoop.
Braca, you're shivering.
Sir, my pants have been quivering. I'm having a shivering for some slivering of that sweet half-scaring booty.
It's like a night before Christmas.
Yeah. And all through the house, not a creature was stirring except Scorpius's blouse. Let's write some fanfiction. Yeah. Background information, please hit me with it, boy.
I'll hit you with it, boy. You better believe it, boy. Okay, here we go. Background information. This episode was shot before Terra Firma to allow time to prepare the sets for that episode.
Good. Oh, wait, yeah. That makes sense.
Interesting. The tag scene between Aaron and Crichton was expanded on set in order to allow Aaron to vent her feeling. Good.
Give her more of that.
What it would have looked like shorter, but cool. In order to prepare for the episode, first-time Farscape director Kate Woods watched over 30 episodes of the series.
More than 30 could be all of them.
Yeah, that's true. Well, no.
It's like a season and a half.
We're on like episode 43 of us, which means that there's probably been like 80 something.
Yeah, she watched like a season and a half.
Yeah.
But it's probably like a smattering of the good ones.
I thought the directing was fine. I didn't notice it, so...
exactly.
She did good work out of it.
Yeah.
Guy Gross, the composer, scored the scenes with Talika with an unusual combination of sounds, including a dulcimer.
What's a dulcimer, Magellan?
Well, it's a musical instrument.
Oh, I found one. Oh, that's cool. I don't know what it does.
This is the
Looks like
is the play along at home part of the podcast.
You can also go to google.com, type in dulcimer, and you'll be tied with us and synced up with us in the podcast.
Are you looking at this, listener? This thing's crazy.
Whoa, look at picture number 3. Whoa, look at that background.
Oh, man. Check out the third row of pictures. That's a good row.
Oh, my God. John.
Oh, actually, if you go down to the 5th row, there's a pretty cool picture.
All right, I'll yeah. It's fun homework for people.
Yeah. Hear that?
No?
No? Okay, keep going.
Yes.
The spider was entirely created by the CG department at Animalogic, and as such, a large silver ball was used on set for the actors to interact with.
It's like the cover to Bare Naked Ladies' latest album, Silver Ball. Oh my God! No, that's just the name of the album. Yep. Silver Ball.
You got it. Dave Elsey designed an early version of the Talika spider that was half woman, half spider, like a Ray Harryhausen creature.
Oh, that would have been cool.
That's cooler, but still not great.
I am surprised I never thought about the connection between the Jim Henson Company and Harryhausen until now. But there are probably a lot of like notes shared back and forth.
Mm-hmm. The spider's disease was originally going to be far more graphic, with makeup inspired by the Incredible Melting Man. The final scenes showing the victims of disease were filmed over 4 separate days, even though only short portions were used in the final edit.
This is like the second time that they've been like, we wanted to make something really violent like the Incredible Melting Man, and they didn't. So weird.
Ugh. The episode references both Crackers Don't Matter and Beware of Dog through dialogue. Don't do that.
Don't do it.
I guess it's cute that what's his face, whose name I already forgotten. I loved it so much.
Excuse me, David Peckinpah?
Peckinpah. Yes. It's great that Peckinpah loved the show so much to reference it, but it's also like...
Exactly.
I just want to say, by the way, that I did enjoy watching this episode, David Peckinpah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, David.
We're holding it to a high standard because we hold Farscape standard. I don't know. I just want a David Peckinpah seem guy that I want to send cool vibes to.
Beyond the Grave.
Beyond the Grave. This episode is the second in which the crew actually eat the monster afterwards. The first monster meal.
I forgot it.
Was in Home on the Remains. Oh, the monster meal.
It's very timely. Oh yeah. Home on the Remains is when they eat the kidva. Yeah.
Yum.
No one's excited as I am.
Yum.
As excited as I am. Basag, my favorite character from Home on the Remains. Sorry. Oh God, Basag, please be on our podcast. Next up, it's time for the Moyabag. All right, let me try that one more time, please. Thank you. I'm going to send it over to the Moyabag now, Magellan. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's time for the Moyabag.
Nice. Be right back.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Moyabag for episode 43 of Farscape. Nope, ScapeChatz. It's me, Magellan, host of ScapeChatz. I almost said Farscape again. In a way, I am a host of Farscape, although I wouldn't put that on my business because my business card is a small index card that just says business. Yeah. Anyway, this is the portion of the show where we read listener questions, comments, feedback, anything you want to throw our way. And let me tell you, there are several ways that you can throw stuff our way. You can tweet at us, follow us also on Twitter at ScapeChatz. CAPCHATZ. That's hard. I don't think I've ever spelled that out loud before. CAPAECHATZ. Huh. It's kind of a catchy sort of spelling. You can also find us on Reddit every week. We post Reddit threads for our episodes. It's reddit.com/r/Farscape, and you can email us, scapechats@gmail.com. We'll start off this week with Twitter. We have a couple tweets here from Matthew Vandevar at NoClassTwit, talking about how when we're done with Farscape, they recommend that we go back and listen to any episode of the ScapeChatz, the ScapeCast. Whoops, we're ScapeChatz. The ScapeCast featuring Nicola Wood, who they say is an expert on symbolism, and they think that we would find her thoughts on Farscape absolutely fascinating. I would love to dig into other Farscape podcasts once ours is done with. If you have any specific episode recommendations, let me know. As always, over here on Twitter, we also have our weekly memo from about the episodes that we watched last week. First off, Kansas. Omens opens by saying, "Oh, sweet Jesus, sweet Frelling," I'm censoring you, Omens, "sweet Frelling Jesus, I love this episode. It's hilarious and beautiful, and Aaron as Cher. Favorite of the season, seriously." Goes on to say, fanfic-wise, a lot of it exists in these disorganized 30-chapter one-shot collections that I'm too lazy to wade through, but Google Farscape ice skating crackfic for my favorite old fandom 40-chapter figure skating monstrosity. Whoever wrote it, please own up so I can thank you. I don't fully understand what you just said, Omens, but I hope that someone comes out of the woodwork to claim whatever masterpiece that sounds like. Omen saying that John is weird, mentally unstable, thus explaining the milk thing, where he just goes up and grabs milk out of the crate in the middle of the day. Omens agrees the abandoned house set is cool. Sugar and sugar-like substances are illegal drugs outside of Earth. Actual canon fact. Betty and Winona. Those are things, so his car and his gun. Betty and Veronica. Betty Finn and Veronica Sawyer, who was played by Winona Ryder. If it were 1988 and not 1985, I'd say John liked Heathers. Yeah, Heathers is a pretty fun one. Omen says it's a bass or a trout, which was that final line of Kansas that we thought was really awkward. Is supposed to not hit, maybe? Who knows? I guess so. That's the only thing that really makes sense. Going on to Terra Firma, Omen says, I just want to point out real fast that Aaron's son just talking with Olivia and Caroline in separate scenes with no guys is my favorite thing, even though often it's not a Bechdel pass because they're talking about men. And the doe-eyed side chick thing bugged me too. Yeah, again, we were talking about how we were annoyed that Aaron was going around all like, oh, shucks, I sure hope he likes me. But there is something to be said for the fact that she really does hope that he likes him, and yeah. Anyway, thank you, Omens, as always, for that lovely memo. Moving on to our Reddit thread for this week, which you can find again at www.reddit.com/r/Farscape. Got a few comments in here. Top comment from regular Reddit commenter Blueblaze Spear, who says, you guys aren't getting to bank episodes like you were hoping, are you? You spotted a couple of odd little things about these episodes that come up later. We see that certain things that seem small in these eps were actually quite intentional. Yeah, we're not, we're working on the banking. Actually, at this point that I'm recording this Moyabag and about to post this episode, we are getting ahead again. Partly because the show is coming off of a certain streaming service, and we need to watch it all and record all of our episodes before then, but also partly because we're trying to get ahead of things a little bit. Blue Spear goes on to say, the fact that the events of Kansas carry forward into Terra Firma suggests to me that John's original pass got replaced with the one where they meddled, and if there are two paths there, the one in which they didn't meddle is now the unrealized reality? As I've said before, we shouldn't try to science Farscape too hard, just as I shouldn't be verbing nouns. I love to verb nouns. It's actually very fun. That makes sense. Sure. Yeah. I don't think we're ever going to come to a point where we can make the unrealized realities work. And I will say, Alan and I just watched Prayer. So, yeah, we're going to have some issues with how this whole thing functions. Blue Blaze Spear also loves the Rigel stuff in Kansas, especially the part where he's eating sugar, and he says, how illegal is this Dren? I knew you guys would appreciate the return of Braca being Scorpius's man. My assumption with him getting the wrong Moya with the missile was that he knew that what he was doing and it was intentional. That's why he insisted on flying the mission himself. Oh, someone else might have accidentally hit the real Moya when faced with 50-50 odds. Now that makes a lot of sense. Blue Bay Spear contends that perhaps leaving Scorpius and Sikozu behind was to insulate humanity from the scary aliens. Although Sikozu came with them and then flew back to hang out with Scorpius, but I guess that does make sense that they wouldn't want to bring Scorpius. Yeah, John wouldn't want to show Scorpius where Earth is or what it's like, or... Okay, I can kind of buy that. More talk about how these episodes set up things later on. And then, in my mind, Twice Shy is the last throwaway episode of the series, but I'll be curious to hear what worth you guys can pull out of it. Mental as anything is fine, but it struck me as weird that they decided that only the males could benefit from mental training, unless the implication is that the women can already run circles around them all mentally. In any case, it justifies the girls only bringing home the beacon, which is fantastic. That's also a very good point that we forgot to mention. Why are only the men getting this training? Who knows? Domain 101 saying that he interpreted Baraka's shooting as thinking that he was shooting at Moya, but that he was going to give Scorpius a warning so that Scorpius could escape with Crichton. So there's some contention in the Reddit thread here, and a lot to think about in terms of Braca. But the point is that he was Scorpius's man, and whatever action he was taking was a pro-Scorpius action. Have other users down here. User Crackers Don't Matter says, well, Alan, I know you're going to be teary-eyed for Twice Shy, the last bug episode of Farscape. Farscape has had a lot of fun bug episodes, but this one is definitely the worst. Also, frail spiders, I think you meant to say. If I remember correctly, they didn't kill the Grinch with the chandelier, but with the Christmas spirit and Dargo's love of shooting things with Lola, which I thought was a hilarious way to kill it. No need to get out of the ship, I'll just shoot it with my Leviathan killing cannon from out here. Good thing Dargo remembered to turn Lola's weapon dial from Leviathan to Meatbag before shooting. That's a good point. I love Dargo and really enjoy the Macton showdown in Mental as Anything. I think you guys will like it too. You're about to find out, aren't you? Reddit user Leo Chris says, chances are you already recorded the Moyabag? Nope, did not. Haha. So I'll keep this brief. First of all, though, about my own comments regarding my guest hosting, I definitely think that was just me being too harsh on myself. Yeah, it definitely was. I thought you were super fun to have on. I definitely think they were trying to imply Karen Shaw was always Chiana, because the universe is supposed to course correct itself, right? And despite John being told to forget everything, Karen is specifically singled out as something he's to remember. Oh, and sometimes I'm glad Farscape was made in the early 2000s. Probably spared us a scene involving Rigel and Naranti Googling cop porn or something. Yeah, I guess that's true. I think in terms of the Karen Shaw thing, it's hard to say. I guess the fact that he was made to forget makes it so that we don't have to reckon with the implications of it being Chiana, but we can still... The question is, like, now the John Crichton that we have, does he have memories of the past unrealized reality that is no longer real, or were his memories shifted towards this new timeline that they created? My guess is the former, so then it's kind of moot, whatever. It's weird space-time stuff going on. Domain 101 says, Bass versus Trout. This was actually the line that Ancient Jack used on Crichton as a test to see if John was himself or an alien entity, but it was a ruse. They were simulating Earth and scanned John's mind for what a human reaction would be. One of those reactions was paranoia, which Ancient Jack simulated by recalling the story of when John caught a bass on a fishing trip, which John astutely corrected to trout. So John asking if it was a bass or a trout was really him asking if this was another mind-frail con job. He's generally more cautious about assuming his father is who he claims to be. Who can blame him? Yeah, good. So that's our Reddit thread for this week. Moving on, finally, to the email. We did get one nice email from N Static Dax.
I put a shot to your system.
Who says, greetings, Alan and Magellan. How's life these days? Life is good, man. Thank you so much for asking. We say this a little bit later on, towards the end of this recording, but, you know, we're college grads now. We're in the working world. It's kooky, crazy, fun, adultish, but not really times. As for Farscape stuff, and Static Dax says, a few quick notes on this week's episodes. So these are the episodes that we're actually watching in the rest of this episode of ScapeChatz. Well, crazy. First we have Twice Shy, or as I renamed it, There Mrs. Shalab. Shaloob? Shabba? I didn't get it. He says coolness points to whoever gets that without Googling. I don't get it. I don't really want to Google right now. I'm a fool. Somebody wants to enlighten me and do the work. I would love it. I liked how in the beginning when Chiana pulls her gun on the traitors, the rest of the crew do the same instantly. Even if they then... Well, let's do that again. I liked how in the beginning when Chiana pulls her gun on the traitors, the rest of the crew do the same instantly. Even if they then think she's nuts for doing so. Nice to know they got her back. That's true. Everybody reacted very quickly. When John keeps trying to get Aaron to talk, and she obviously doesn't want to, she hits him instead. So I guess along with Pilot's DNA, she got a little Klingon in her as well. The open-air mouth bite Scorpius gives Chiana was just out of place enough to give Val Kilmer shivers. More coolness points. I know who Val Kilmer is, kind of. At around 19 minutes into the episode, I just loved the camera shot of Chi, Rigel, and Dargo walking down a hallway. Tip of the hat to the director. Yeah, there's a lot. I feel like this season especially, there's been a little bit more creativity with the hallways. maybe out of necessity, but I just feel like we're getting cool hallway shots time from every now and then. Little pity in here for Sikozu, always getting her her limbs and body parts ripped off. And Scorpius got hella mad when he saw someone had manhandled his main squeeze. What would Braca think of his jealousy? Whoa, what a love triangle, huh? Scorpius, Braca, and Sikozu. I would watch that show. I'd watch that show. Second, we have Mental as Anything. Quite frankly, on rewatching this episode, I was so enjoying the story, I didn't really think to take any notes. Aside from the dull guru dude, this was a very good ep to me. Dargo gets all the feels. Please don't talk about Peter Frampton that way. Although putting Rigel in a tiny robe like everybody else had on was just hilarious. But maybe now's a good time to mention something that's kind of been bugging me for a while, but I just never took the time to put it into words before. If memory serves me right, you guys once said something about Dargo was supposed to be very young for his species, like around 16, but he was locked up for 8 cycles, and somehow he has a teenage son. So his kid Jaffe would be, what, 10 at the most? So Chiana slept with a 10-year-old Jaffe, then deflowered an underage John in Earth Past. Does this mean Chiana is a pedophile? I don't know. I think what's going on there, Dargo is young for his species, but his species probably, relatively speaking, reaches some kind of sexual maturity at a young age. So it seemed to me like Jothy, I almost forgot his name, Jothy was the equivalent of like in his late teens. So like first entering sexual maturity. And same with young John Crichton. Because Chiana's also young, which I think is important to keep in mind. I think the writers and the creators want us to think of Chiana as kind of a loose cannon teenager almost. And so that's why she's being paired with these other characters. When we get into the actual ages, it gets fishy and fuzzy, but also Jothy's been around the block, you know. He didn't seem like he was 10. He wasn't a character that was being presented to us as if he was 10 years old. Anyway, Aesthetic Dax wraps up by saying, I'm going to stop there before I give myself an embolism. Take care, gents, and as always, I look forward to hearing your thoughts on these episodes. Thank you so much. Love getting emails like that. It's really, really nice. To reiterate, if you want to send us any questions, comments, feedback, or money, nope, none of that. You can find us on Twitter at ScapeChatz, find our email, scapechatz@gmail.com, or seek us out on Reddit, reddit.com/r/Farscape. We also apparently have a Tumblr. I don't know anything about Tumblr. Alan will plug it at the end of the episode. So if you were thinking about not listening anymore for some reason, stick around for that Tumblr plug, because it's going to really brighten your day, the way that you've brightened listeners. Enjoy the rest of the show.
But don't hesitate, 'cause your love one way. Hey, hey, hey. Ooh, baby, I love your way every day. Wanna tell you I love you.
And we're back. The second episode that we watched this week was Season 4, Episode 15, Mental as Anything, which was written by Mark Saraceni, directed by Magellan's best friend in the whole world, Jeff Bennett,
Yay.
and it aired January 31st, 2003 in the US. I am really curious what you think about this one, because I didn't hate it, is what I'm going to say. It's like fine, but you were telling me earlier, you're like, this could have worked a lot better earlier.
Yeah, here's my opinion. I didn't love it.
Oh, great opinion.
So I think we're both kind of feeling the same way, but facing different directions. Just because I'm coming from the place of, I feel like this plot line deserved this amount of attention, and it deserved it sooner.
You were specifically referring to Dargo's like journey into understanding his past and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean we got notes of it. In previous episodes, there was the one where everybody's like role-playing different people in his life because he's going crazy or something.
Right.
I don't remember that.
Classic episode.
I don't remember what that
Season
one was called. And then there's the stuff with his son, but I don't know. It's just odd to me, the timing of this episode, because we'd kind of been led to believe that it was closed off. Like, I wasn't really thinking anymore that Dargo needed some kind of resolution. I was just bummed out that everything was wrapped up for him, and so this kind of came out of left.
I I could have seen this episode also working in season 4 if we had also established earlier in this season that this is the time when we're going to wrap up everyone's plot with their own individual fun episode. Mm-hmm. Because then it's like, oh, this is Dargo's chance to kind of like, again, the infinitely repeatable Mass Effect comparison. In the third game, they kind of like had each of your party members had like a storyline that you could pursue that was like, and here's the end of that. And then we bring them together and we move on, and it's all about like closing those loops. Yeah. And season 4 of Farscape up until now has not at all been that. It's been about John. It's been about the incoming Scaran peacekeeper conflict. And it's been about big things, and it hasn't been about these small like personal journeys that this episode kind of is taking us on.
I think the Mass Effect or like RPG comparison is pretty apt, because to me it felt like in the game that you're playing, that is Farscape, you can talk to Dargo from time to time and he'll have like a new dialogue option that's like, oh, now I want to talk about my dead wife a little bit, and you get to do the next mission in his story, right? That's kind of how those games go. And it feels like Farscape has, whoever's playing has known for a while that they can talk to Dargo to get the next thing, but they're like, I should do the main plot first, right? Let me just get through that. And they've been doing the main plot for a long time, and now the game is forcing them to like clean up these other things before they can progress. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they're like, oh, I forgot to do this side quest. I might as well do it now before I
let me just get it out of the way. Or like the next part of the main quest seems a little boring. I'll just get this wrapped up and then move forward.
Right.
It just feels like this has been like kind of an open entry in the quest log for a long time, and we're trying to clear our menu out.
I like that that way of looking at it, and it makes sense because there is so much of the Farscape progression that feels like it is paying lip service to every single character. And so, you know, we're talking about all of this and we're talking about how this is the big Dargo episode, but like ultimately what's disappointing about it is it's not fantastic, especially for a character that I hold so near and dear to my heart. It's like they go on a retreat to this like really annoying, I don't know why I disliked him so incredibly much. There's just something about the guy that is sort of the leader of this group of people that I didn't like very much. I didn't trust him.
I didn't, he was like kind of dubbed over a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It felt like he sounded like kind of a classic mediocre Farscape side character, where they're like, they have this arbitrary makeup and the acting is very straightforward. Like whoever's doing this is not really bringing something new to this character. They're just playing it exactly as it is on the page.
Right.
And he's like dubbed over a little bit. He's doing this weird kind of eye squint thing, and maybe that's the guy. And if that's the guy, then I don't want to say that disparage the actor himself, but it's just, I don't know. It's just like a weird character, and you're not really sure what to make of it. And part of it is you could like expect him to be a villain, probably, and he's not.
Not really.
Yeah. So the whole framing of this episode was inconsequential.
Yeah. It ended up just being a method for us to get to the flashbacks, which are the bulk and the meat and the potatoes of this episode. The character's name is Katoya, by the way.
Yeah.
He always looks like he's winking. Also, fun fact, he's played by John Brumpton, which is, for A, amazing name, and B... What?
Yeah, I like that name.
It's John I just love a good, like, hard BR name in the end of your last name. Brumpton. He played Basag in Home on the Remains, who was the, like, Chiana's friend in that episode. So,
okay, so this isn't that.
It always reminds me and makes me smile that, like, people... Correct. But John Brumpton is great, but not in this episode. He's just fine. I don't know why I said he was great. Okay, so the like... framing of we're gonna go on a retreat and like learn about ourselves and kind of like learn to chill out is really good, and it's actually, this is a good time for that, you know. We I don't know if this is the episode that people mentioned. I don't think it is, where we were like, what is an episode that has no conflict and is just about people talking and figuring things out? It's definitely not this one based on what we watched. This episode is more about like combat therapy, as I was referring to it with you earlier, because the whole deal with and I want to call him Peter Frampton for some reason. John Brumpton's Katoya. With Katoya's thing is like he takes you to this retreat and everybody gets into like these cool space outfits, I guess, and they go into the mental arena and figure out their stuff by fighting another person inside of each other's brains.
Yeah.
It's weird.
That it is very cool on paper, and you're right that it makes sense that we would do this kind of episode as we're gearing up to ramp into the climax of the season. But it does also feel like an awkward pause, I guess. Sort of the calm before the storm.
Yeah. And we're running out of calm before the storm because we have like 7 episodes of the show left, of the whole show.
Yeah.
Whether or not that gets into like the weirdness of the production schedule of this show is not in our hands to decide. But it felt weird, is what we can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the mental arena, they're playing this it changes depending on like which 2 people are in there. Because like Rigel goes in there with like some dude, I think, and like gets his butt kicked. And then John goes in there, I think, at one point, and they play like mental yoga pong is what I referred to it as in my notes, where they're like Dragon Ball Z bouncing a ball back and forth, and whoever can like throw it the hardest back mentally wins, I guess.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. It's visually kind of cool. It's like cool to see that like energy ball kind of move and stuff. But it's like what is as someone who is interested in this whole idea of like conversational therapy and combat therapy in some way, like getting your aggression out, because that's the whole thing that Dargo needs to do. It's like, what is fighting someone else in the mind space going to accomplish, and how is that going to make you feel better? You know?
Yeah. That was kind of an ongoing, this relationship between control and anger and violence, how that's being played out, because the whole episode is ultimately about Dargo acknowledging the fact that kind of has or had violent tendencies, that he has or had a lack of control over those tendencies, and that going forward is going to make an effort to have better control over himself and his reactions and urges to things. So that's on the one hand, but then on the other hand, like when he's in control and Macton's like, you're in control, Dargo's like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Like I'm gonna really beat you up. It's like, what? Huh?
Well, that's like the Farscape sort of dramatic irony of the ending, which we'll get to, but it's like, you expect Dargo to come out of this and be like, I finally learned to not be angry unless it's worth it. And he has Macton's life in his hands, and then he's like, I decided to let him like live in that nightmare space for the rest of his life. And John's like, why didn't you kill him? And he says, I'm not that enlightened. And you're like, oh, he didn't make it. He didn't completely succeed in what they came here to do, but he definitely is in control more than he was at the start. Because, referring to Macton, naturally... Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
And is that a good thing? Like, before he would go into fits of, like a fugue state of rage, and now he's, like, fully cognizant of the violence that he's committing.
Yeah, whether or not that's a good thing is definitely up in the air. I just think it means that he's kind of, like, come to terms with... And if we're going to just get a little bit meta for a sec, like, come to terms with his role. It's like, yeah, I'm the angry guy, and I'm not going to be able to fix it, and hopefully I don't... hopefully I don't, what am I trying to say? I don't have any lapses, and hopefully I don't lose control and hurt anyone, but I know where I fit into the grand scheme of things, and it is as the powerful one in this group and the one that can take charge. That's where he works.
Yeah.
He is the id to John's ego, if that makes sense.
Right.
And speaking of Macton, that's kind of the annoyingly perfect coincidental conflict of this episode is like, they go to this retreat and they're like, oh, there's a bunch of cool people here. But wait a minute, who's this 70s porn star looking dude? Oh my God, it's the one guy from my past. Yeah, see, my brother-in-law is at this naked yoga retreat or whatever. But I guess they do.
And the fog clears.
Yeah. He's like, who's that? I recognize that dongus anywhere. It's my brother-in-law. I guess they do explain later that he's been looking for Dargo because he's a peacekeeper.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. So he was like, I knew you were going to be here. This is not a perfect coincidence, but I still was just like, yeah, that's where the episode was going to go. You don't just fight your inner demons. You have to fight your physical demons.
Yeah. It was annoying to me how convenient.
That he just happened to be there.
Yeah, that he was just there. I guess it makes sense that he was looking for Dargo, but if he could find them, then why couldn't somebody else find them? I don't know.
And is his goal to kill Dargo?
No, I guess his goal was what Dargo did to him, which is to trap him in his guilt and nightmares forever. I think he wanted, because Dargo, so basically in between seasons, from what we understand, Dargo found the information of where Macton was. And went to find him and kill him, but then decided not to kill him, but let him know, like, hey, I know where you are, and I could strike at any time. I want my revenge. This is my revenge for you to live in fear, more or less.
Right.
And so Macton, I guess, wanted to make Dargo realize what he'd done to Lolan. And we'll talk about that. We'll get into that in detail.
Yeah.
But he wanted Dargo to realize what he'd done and to suffer for what he'd done, to live in his own guilt. I don't think Macton had designs to kill him because he has some line in there where he's like, if I could kill you, you'd be dead. Everybody says that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
don't know how true that is or how tough this guy is, but it seems at least that it was not to do physical harm to Dargo. It was to do lasting mental.
Interesting. And that's very Peacekeeper also, very in line with their whole modus operandi, if you will. And I would assume that you would.
I will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. The Macton stuff is definitely, it's definitely fertile ground for a good, rich, thematically relevant soap opera-esque drama to happen.
Rich, creamy
All right.
analysis.
It's a good sauce. I made a nice sauce. God, you're weird. Let's not be weird. Let's be very serious. It's a nice lobster bisque, a nice Chianti. Shush, Magellan.
Yes, I believe that the themes and motifs in this episode contribute to the viewer's conceptualization of characterization.
You're just reading out of a dictionary right now, aren't you?
Diction is an important rhetorical device, much like onomatopoeia or anaphora or metaphors or rhymes or adjectives. These all incorporate together to create the meaning.
Okay. That has been Webster's Presents, a brief reading of the finest text.
That's what podcasts are going to be like when robots do podcasts.
It's just going to be reading out of the dictionary. Oh my God.
Like at first, robots are going to do podcasts and they're not going to really get it yet. They're going to get it. Be out of business.
Yep. Oh, well, let's try and get what we can in while we still can.
What?
No, they can replace us. Maybe. We need to talk about the stuff that happens in the flashbacks because that's the meat and the yumminess of the episode. We learn that Dargo wasn't exactly on point with what his description of his reason for getting kicked off of his planet was.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really complicated word. What I meant to say, which is he messed up.
Yeah,
he goofed up real bad.
Let's just recap what we thought we knew before.
Yes.
So when we meet Dargo, he's on Moya, a prisoner. The prisoner have just kind of taken over Moya and are on the run. And over the course of season 1, we learn that Dargo did something bad or was accused of doing something bad, but we think that he's probably innocent. That there are other people on the ship who are guilty. Zan, for example, was guilty of what she was accused of doing.
Right.
But Dargo, we think, didn't do it. Eventually, we learn in that episode that I was talking about that I can't remember the name too. Should have looked it up because I knew that it was going to be relevant for this episode. Don't worry about it. Okay, great. Thanks, bud. We learn that Dargo had a Sebacean wife, and it's set up for us, presented to us, the viewer, as this whole thing where her Sebacean brother was disgusted by the two of them. And out of his disgust, because Sebaceans have a value of racial purity, which you can kind of guess, given the whole fascist iconography, because of their sort of drive towards racial purity. Oh, and also the fact that Aaron's son was completely exiled because she touched John Crichton in the first episode. Remember that whole reason for her being stripped of her rank?
Yeah.
Anyway, because of that, the brother killed his sister. Macton killed Lolan and framed Dargo. That's what we were told. And that's kind of what Dargo understood to be the story of the whole thing. And in this episode, Macton's around and he's like, no, buddy, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was you who did it.
Picture us butt naked.
What? Butt naked.
It's very serious. By the way,
I know, it's very serious.
Season 1, episode 10, They've Got a Secret is the one where we originally learned about Dargo's past.
That's the one, right? So Macton's like, nobody, you killed her in a fit of Luxon hyper rage. And then he's like, hey, John Crichton, you know about Luxon hyper rage? And John said, did you know that they go into comas and forget stuff? And John's like, I don't know why I didn't know that, because it seems pretty self-evident that that's what happens. But Macton, now you got me really thinking about this. My noodle's cooking. And then Dargo's noodle's really cooking.
Cooking noodles.
Then we go through this whole brain quest. Dargo goes to to Peter Frampton, and he's like, Peter Frampton, I need to figure out, like, if I did this to my wife, again, very serious.
Very serious.
It's like super, like one of the most serious, important episodes of the entire show that I'm referencing Borat and the Shaggy classic, It Wasn't.
And acclaimed singer Peter Frampton.
Yep, and acclaimed. Well, I think he can get pretty serious.
I can see the sunset in your eyes, brown and gray. You besides, clouds are stalking islands in the sun. Wish I could buy one out the season, but don't hesitate, 'cause your love won't wait. Ooh, baby, I love your way every day.
I mean, he does love your way, baby.
Okay, this is, I'm like dodging and maneuvering because it's really deeply disturbing, the thing that's revealed to us, which is that Dargo went into this state where he was not aware of what he was doing, completely forgot it, and it turns out that he was physically...
And doing it multiple times, and she never told him
Yes.
that he was doing it.
And he would ask her if he was, and she would say no, and then he would say, you would tell me if I was, and she would pause, and then she would say, you would never do that. And he's like, but you'd tell me if I was. She says, yes, of course I'd tell you.
She didn't tell him. But that's the first layer.
Yeah.
And so you spend most of this episode running on the assumption of like, oh, Dargo is unintentionally an abuser. And it kind of like reframes a lot of what we know about him and makes us feel bad for Lalonde and makes us feel bad for Dargo and makes us hate everything. It's sad. It's like, oh, he's not, because his whole thing is like, with the Joffrey stuff and with the Chiana stuff, is he's a family man. He wants to keep the group together.
Right.
And to have the show tell us like, hey, the character that is so much about being a good person and being careful about who he, and takes into his life and
looking out
loves.
for the people around him, being fiercely loyal.
Yeah, and he's all about that. And it's like, oh, without his own knowledge of it, he's been hurting the people that were closest to him physically and severely. And eventually he's, according to this episode, killed her.
Well, it goes through. I mean, let's talk about the mutations that the story goes through, and then I want to like dig into the ramifications of this truth for the character and how we're thinking about this character. So, like you were saying, for a lot of the episode, Macton presents that, you were beating when you were in your hyper. And Dargo tells John this whole thing about how Luxon hyper rage is like very hard to control, but Luxons train themselves to control it. There's a reason that young Luxons are not allowed to marry, and it's because of this. It's because of this hyper rage that they can go into, which is, that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah.
So Macton says that you were doing this thing. And at first, we as the viewer are kind of in this position where it's he said, she said. And we're like, well, either Dargo is right, Macton is messing with him, or Macton is right, and Dargo was doing this and possibly killed his wife. But we don't know for sure which way it is. We move forward in the episode, and we find out when Dargo and Peter Frampton go into the dreamscape that it's like pretty much certain that Dargo was falling into these fits of rage and hurting his wife. It's like pretty certain.
Right.
Then Macton kills Peter Frampton dead and hops on into the dreamscape and says, now I'm going to take control and I'm going to like do this actually really visually cool and creepy thing where the voices of me and my sister swap and our actors swap as well.
Yep.
That whole sequence was like super disturbing in a really well done way. And there is where Macton is like, eventually you did this so much that you killed her. Yeah. Then Dargo doesn't really believe that. Macton like forces him into a rage, and then Dargo is able to overcome it and control it and confront Macton violently, first of all.
Yes.
So keep thinking about violence and how it's playing into this episode and this show. A show that prides itself on the virtues of communication and thought, and boldness, love, and how is violence playing into the show is something that's really interesting. But anyway, so he approaches Macton and he's like, tell me the real story. Macton says, well, okay, here's what happened. She killed herself, man. She totally killed herself because of you. And Dargo's like, no, that's not true. I know my wife, and yeah, okay, I'll accept that I was hurting her and she didn't tell me. That's frelled up for me to figure that out. And I'm really messed up about what I did. But I know my wife, she would not have killed herself and left our son without a mother. So tell me the real deal here, Buckaroo.
By the way, man, I love that moment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, the real truth is that Dargo knows the people in his life so well that he can't even be fooled into thinking that he did something wrong when he didn't, or that she killed herself out of grief, rather.
Yeah. And it's such a fantastic moment of redeeming the character of Lolan, because I think for a lot of this episode she's kind of used as this narrative object in Dargo's story and in this struggle between Macton, and we don't really get any hints of her
as a character
agency, except the idea that she's concealing what's happening from Dargo because she like thinks the best of him, and she, you know, whatever. We can get into that in a second of how we feel about the psychology of what she's doing. But then if it had been that she had killed herself, that would have been really, really unfortunate and would have felt cheap, right? Like we're using this idea of a wife character to tell this emotional story. But Dargo saying, no, she would have looked out for our son is like, oh yeah, this is a fully fledged character who was making difficult choices for important reasons and had power in the situation that she was in, even though the circumstances were definitely destructive and very dangerous for her. So you're right. I thought that moment was great as well, and it felt really cool in the context. So he's like, tell me the whole story. No way she killed her. And then Macton's like, here's what I came over, and I was like, we're gonna lock Dargo up for doing this stuff. And she said, no way, I'm not gonna let you do it. She tried to stab me, and then boom, 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 my lightning fast peacekeeper reflexes kicked in and I stabbed her. Whoops. Felt real bad about it. Dargo says, yeah, you're good so far, but the body had marks that she was beaten. And Macton's like, well, then I did the stuff that I did. Very visually very striking
for multiple reasons, man. This is the last note that I have in my bit here. Is like that reveal is him saying, hey, I needed to frame someone else for this, so I beat her to make it look like someone else did it, and then I was able to construct this story, and that is the reason that you got imprisoned, was that I blamed you, even though it was my fault. So we see him do it, and that's pretty messed up, and it's like, oh, that's rough. But then, because the show is really clever and they're using the whole mind space and the whole Peter Frampton's yoga palace idea to its full effect, they show him doing it to nothing. They show him in this infinite loop of like, I'm just hitting nothing. I can't stop anymore. Oh my God. It hurt me to do it, and I can't. I'm just trapped in my loop. And that's why when Dargo at the end is like, I didn't kill him, it's like, no, you didn't have the self-control and the kindness to do that, to end his life. You let him live in that forever.
Yeah.
In Macton's fundamentally darkest, saddest moment, as this just laid bare, you are just a monster, and you were the real monster all along. Yeah,
it is pitch black.
This is like as dark. This is like as dark as Farscape has gotten in terms of like, because you know what it is though, is none of this, now that I'm thinking about it, is science fiction. Like this is an episode about two men who are vulnerable and cannot control their anger. You know,
true.
And the part where it's sci-fi is the part where it pulls out and he's punching the air and it's in the mind space.
Right.
So that part is clever, and they're using the tropes of the genre while also just having a really true, like I said, almost soap opera-esque dramatic story about abuse. And they blend those two things brilliantly in that moment.
Yeah, I think Farscape has like had other things happen narratively that could be on the same scale of darkness. So John's rape on the part of Greza, for example, is something that has a lot of darkness to it. Scorpius's origins, again, that sort of element as well, like conceptually very dark. But I think this is the episode that for me took a concept that was like dark and risky in that way and conveyed it with proper emotional and visual weight.
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't love this episode is because of the placement in the series arc, and because I don't know, something about it, like it was in its little space, it was rendered well, but the rest of the episode was not really supporting that. I don't know, something about it just felt off, even though like the moments that were supposed to stand out to me did stand out.
Right. We clearly enjoyed the moments that were, or, appreciated the moments that were meant to be appreciated. I think it's partly the framing device isn't great, the like retreat thing, or it's not handled super well because it's kind of corny in sort of the Farscape way, like the not good corny Farscape, because there's good corny Farscape that I consider the choice to be good corny Farscape. But then there's bad corny where it's just like, oh, we're on this dumb planet, we're all wearing dumb suits, and it's like, there's all that. And then let's not forget, like, we're talking about all this stuff, but there is a whole, like, 20-minute B-plot about John, like, getting imprisoned, and he's, like, going cuckoo in this weird, like...
He has this whole, like, Karate Kid thing where he's got to catch the key before it falls
into the lava, and then he learns to just grab that lava.
Yeah.
And then he's singing, or he's whistling the song from Bridge on the River Kwai, which I only know because I have, like I said before, I had the subtitles on Netflix for when I need to like pay attention to an episode, and it kept saying John continues to whistle the song from Bridge on the River Kwai. I was like, thanks, subtitles, really appreciate it. So he's doing that. He's just living one big movie reference, and it's like his escape is dumb. It isn't about him. It doesn't develop in any way. All of that is happening while Dargo is going on this vision quest. Like, it clashes really badly, and that ultimately leads to why this episode feels really mixed.
And then it continues to raise the difficulty with having Scorpius on the ship, and it stretches my belief that they would buy into this whole thing where Scorpius is like, we're gonna go on a cool retreat, guys, come on, he's my buddy. And like John, Dargo, and Rigel wouldn't say, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it, that sounds like a good idea, man. I understand Scorpius's motivations, and they're coming through pretty well. And the revelation in this episode that Grayza probably knows or would be able to figure out where Earth is really important. But it strains my suspension of disbelief that they would say, yeah, Scorpius, it sounds like we can hang out and do what you want to do today. It sounds great.
Because there's, the only, like, it's again comes to the question of like, why bring XYZ onto the planet with us? Like, why'd you bring Rigel? Why did you bring, I get John and Dargo together because they're like attached at the hip. And then Scorpius comes because he engineered the whole thing. And him and Peter Frampton have great back and forth, like behind the scenes, where they're like, oh, these boys, they're really working together really hard, doing lots of sad, angry fighting.
Yeah.
And then Peter Frampton's like, I don't know, man. I'm doing my best. They don't seem to be getting it yet. A modicum of self-control is all you need to pass the test or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's similar to one of the lines he said. It's really cool to me to see Scorpius have friends that aren't peacekeepers. It's just like, I like the idea that he's been developing connections his whole life. And he knows people like Peter Frampton to just be like, hey, I need you for something. And I need you to helping my friends.
Yeah, that little piece of backstory where Peter Frampton says, I tried to train you to not have to use coolant rods. That's kind of, I could still train you.
I have to show you the way.
Yeah. And their dialogue is nice. It's well written. But my thing with dialogue is if I'm listening to the dialogue and I say, that's really well written, it means that it wasn't well acted.
That's a good point. Yeah, because it's just... Well, I yelled just for some reason. It's just... it's two people standing in a room. There's like barely anything to it. Mm-hmm. It's just like lines being spouted at each other. And it's in a dark room too. And they're just like both like, hey, do you feel like we do? And it's like, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Peter Frampton, I guess I do feel the way that we do.
And my other big issue with this episode is it's an episode all about men exerting control and harm upon women, and there are basically no female characters in it.
Except Lolan. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And maybe that's the intention, but I kind of want to know what Chiana would think of this revelation. I kind of want to know
where was she during all of this?
What Aaron has to say about controlling emotions. I kind of want to see Scorpius, all of his interactions in this episode with Sikozu next to him. Like, I feel like the women of Moya would have been welcome additions to this plot to kind of flesh it out. and get a little more from it.
They all have they had better ties to it than us, especially Rigel and John, who like yes control. Well, like, Rigel kind of has relationships to the idea of control and possession and stuff as a former Dominar and also someone who was tortured for so many years. But like, what does John need to be in this episode for?
Right, very good question. He doesn't.
It's because he's the prowling protagonist. Like that's the only reason, and because he likes to be with Dargo. But it's like, John annoyed me in his presence in this episode because of all of that stuff. And it's like, man, this show, I'm going to talk ahead a little bit. Next week, we're watching the All Ladies episode of Farscape.
Sure.
And it took us too long to get there. We're finally there. And it's the episode I've been waiting for so long because I know it's great. And gosh darn it, we really needed it because this episode is just like a testosterone fest.
Yeah.
In good ways, like the whole like masculinity stuff and how that's toxic is ground that this show needed to cover at some point, but it's just like, mix it up a little bit, Farscape. Give us some other opinions.
Yeah, it's not the whole toxic masculinity thing is not really criticized enough. And Dargo is guilty, but I guess part of my problem is the episode did not clearly communicate a moral position on Dargo's actions. Like I don't know how the episode feels about what he's done. I find it deplorable, but then it's a question of, Lux and hyper rage, like maybe he really had zero control physiologically. How different is it? And then you can draw this allegory to like, it's like alcoholism, blah, blah, blah. Like it kind of seems like that is what it's aligned to in a real world context. And then if you make that alignment, then again, I find it deplorable.
Right.
So there's some gray area there, but more in like a logistically confusing gray area way than a morally gray way. And then the thing I found really interesting about Rigel's presence specifically is he and Dargo have this exchange where Dargo's like, Macdon's here. Oh, I'm feeling pretty bad about it. And Rigel's like, you got to kill that guy. Rigel says, isn't that what you set out to do when we all left Moya? Dargo says, part of me knew that wouldn't bring Lolan back. And another part couldn't resist letting him know that I knew exactly where he was. And then Rigel says, pay attention to the part that wants to kill him. He's given you a second chance to take your revenge. Dargo says, I'm not sure I want to. And Rigel says, for Yacht's sake, kill him and be done with it.
Right. And that line is played a little bit comedically, where it's just like, for Yacht, like, exaggerated because that's Rigel's whole thing. But it does remind us that he has taken a hard line. Like, he's old enough in his life at this point. He's not going to shift on that position. He would have killed him in a heartbeat. And because he spent so much of his life either with power or with power held against him, in the two halves of his backstory. And so, Rigel will never let someone like Macton live if that was his situation. Mm-hmm. But Dargo is still young enough and still open to change enough, which I think is the most important detail that characters have on this show, is that they're open to change. And in life, I think that's one of the best values of a person.
That's a good point.
That he manages to not pull the trigger at the end, metaphorically.
Yeah. But he kind of does. He does take his revenge.
A fate worse than death.
Yeah. It made me think a little bit about the cartoon one, Revenging Angel.
Yep. Hey.
And that whole episode's meditation on the idea of revenge in this show.
Right.
And if revenge is this is kind of contributing to that discussion, but it muddies the waters a little bit. And maybe it muddies them in a productive literary way, and maybe it muddies them in an unproductive way. I'd be curious to hear what people think about that.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be our call to questions and answers this week. Yeah. Let us know what you think about that in addition to everything else. I think that covers the episode, though, man.
Yeah. I want to hear what people have to say about the Dargo and Lolan thing. I don't have a good way of putting my thoughts together on that. Like, I haven't decided if it's how it's changed the way I think about Dargo. It has. But yeah, this is the meat to chew on from this week, and I really want to see some discussion and kind of learn from the listeners about how they interpreted it or how they reacted to it, all that stuff. Because I think this is a little more even-handed of a moment of drama like this than previous moments that we've seen in the show.
Right, definitely. I will even go so far as to say, because I have touted myself as like Dargo's #1 fan, on this show, if the discussion gets going, I would love to contribute my more long form thoughts into an argument or whatever it sprouts up as being. So get in there, get in those comments, kids, teens, adults, babies.
Adult teen babies.
Adult teen babies are going to read us the background information now.
Okay. Gigi Edgley does not appear in this episode. Was Aaron in this episode?
I bet you there was a scene at the beginning where they were all there,
Aaron
like
was
real
there.
brief.
Yeah. Despite not appearing, Melissa Jaffer and Rayleigh Hill are credited among the guest cast for this episode. This is the only episode of season 4 in which Sakozu does not appear.
Good. Great.
Dave Elsey wanted to have Katoya wear special contact lenses, but John Brumpton was suffering an eye infection. Oh, well. And the unit nurse prevented them from using the lenses. So maybe that's what was up with his eye?
That would make perfect sense. That led to a really cool character detail that he always looked like he was kind of winking. So sorry, Peter Frampton.
John Brumpton.
Oh. Yes, John Brumpton.
The title comes from the band whose lead singer designed the Mambo shirts regularly worn by Ricky Manning. Okay. The set of lights and CG area of the set caused issues for some of the actors, making them feel sick when they turned their heads as the lights seemed to move.
Oh yeah, there are some weird lights in that. Yeah.
The opening scene with John and Aaron was added late to explain why only the guys were featured in the episode, as well as to introduce the television set. Okay.
Wait.
So I guess they said something? I don't remember that scene.
What, I remember television set vaguely. What was that?
I don't remember.
People are mad. No, there was like a thing. They got like a TV. They were like, oh, we're going to watch. Yeah. Well, didn't they like start the episode? Yeah. Sorry. They start the episode by watching TV together. That's where Aaron is in this episode. And that's why that part, we keep forgetting it because it was added later. Does that make sense? Like there was a scene at the beginning where he was like, oh, I'm going to show you all these cool shit. It was brief. But I remember looking at that and being like, you know what I did have a thought during that was that is probably the only moment in this season where we're going to see a sense of calm and tranquility. Is that like one scene?
Probably. Some of the writers were in favor of revealing Dargo as Lolan's murderer, but David Kemper felt that it did not fit the character. I don't know, man.
Ultimately, they could have taken this arc to either be the first twist, which is, hey, Dargo, you abused your wife and killed her without realizing it. And that could have been like, oh, he's going to learn to accept that he's not in control during hyperage and then learn to control it and like go into some meditative state or something like that. This version of it is more like, it wasn't your fault. Don't worry about it. You're fine. And that definitely felt like a rewrite or something. It takes all of the responsibility off of Dargo.
Yeah, that's a great point. That really did bug me because Dargo walked away and still had moral superiority.
100%. Yeah, he comes out of it fine, which is why I can understand why this rubbed you the wrong way, is because of that.
Yeah. The light ball in the arena was added by the visual effects department after the editing of the episode.
Wait, there wasn't a real ball sphere of light that bounced back and forth? Come on.
There was insufficient time to change Dargo's makeup to its season 1 look, though he should have looked this way in the flashback.
No. He doesn't look different than he did in season 1 because he's changed physically. He looks different because they improved the makeup. They can use the new makeup on the old Dargo.
Yeah, but the justification for the new makeup was that he was like sunburned from being in space.
Oh, yeah, my God, it is. You're right.
Remember?
I forgot about that completely. Yeah. Ugh. Farscape, what a show.
I know. That's the background info, dude.
Beautiful, dude. I think it's time for us to move on to the next segment where we read brief summaries of the next episode. This segment has no name. Unless we came up with one last week and I forgot it.
We didn't. Well, maybe we did.
Okay.
But out of protest, this segment has no name.
It's on no planet. There's no a copyrighted name in the second half of it. Nope. It's just, this is the part where we read the next 2 episodes of Farscape that we're going to watch.
Consider any past iteration of this segment an unrealized.
Completely. Yep. Yes. And it's not the kind of thing where all the realities eventually converge and become the same. Nope. This is the true reality that we're in.
The next episode we're watching is Season 4, Episode 16, Bringing Home the Beacon. The ladies of Moya head for a commerce settlement to purchase a device that will help disguise Moya. The arrivals of several high-ranking peacekeepers and Scarans, however, give them a new mission and a new threat.
That, first of all, yay, it's the ladies episode. Ladies' night, going out to... That summary is good because it just has to say the ladies of Moya head for a commerce settlement, and I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Here we go. Let's watch 5 episodes of that.
Yes, please.
The next episode we're watching is A Constellation of Doubt, which is Season 4, Episode 17. It seems like the description here on the Farscape wiki has some typos, so I'm going to kind of reword it as I go on the fly here. On Moya, as John wonders about the location of Katratzi, he obsessively watches a television transmission which Moya has intercepted from Earth. It is a program documenting the aliens' recent visit and the reactions of Earth's people.
A word?
Yeah, that sounds pretty fly.
So it's a sequel to Terra Firma, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Neato. Very neato. Very exciting. Very juicy. And then we're pretty much at the finish line after that, folks. We only got a couple episodes left. We're so close. But I'm also at the same time very excited to get there.
Yeah.
It's all great. It's time for plugs.
Plugs.
You can email ScapeChatz at scapechats@gmail.com. You can also tweet at ScapeChatz for comments from me, posts about the episode, and I will from now say I definitely recommend you follow that account or at least check it when you don't see an episode up, because that is exactly where you're going to find reasons and explanations for why episodes aren't up on time. We're working with moving the schedule around of when we post new episodes, as with this one, for example. So definitely check that place out. That's the easiest place to get like live updates.
I probably mentioned this in the Moyabag if I ended up doing the Moyabag for this episode, but we have recently, for life background info, we've recently graduated college, the both of us.
That's the college graduating music.
Yeah, and I'm working at a high school now, which is like very busy. So I'm still, even now in October, I'm still adapting to that schedule and figuring out the best way to kind of put in the time to record and to watch the episodes and to edit and all this stuff. So that's where a lot of the delays have been coming from. But we're in the process of smoothing it out. But that's just so everybody's on the same page about that.
Like sweet Jiffy peanut butter. At the end of the day, it'll be sweet and smooth and bad for you. Also, we have a guest coming up soon, so keep your ears tuned for that, please, and thank you. We got one more guest episode, and if you want to be on one, you should send us emails of your voice as an MP3. That'd be great.
Yeah.
You're running out of episodes to do it, though, so just get to it.
Yep. Very few episodes.
And other than that, we also have a Tumblr, ScapeChatz.tumblr.com, where we mostly just post episodes. And for us personally, I can be found at twitter.com/Alan Ibrahim, spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. Magellan.
You can find me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. I think in a previous week, I teased that I was coming out with a new kind of project soon. Still in the works. Still
gumming up the works.
Keep staying, my friend, and maybe you'll hear about it.
This is why I don't like to announce things before they happen, is because then you can delay it as much as you want.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to put light a fire under myself, and it did not work.
Right. It's good for you. And also, folks, I have been privy to the project for a while. It's fresh as heck. It's so cool. And y'all are going to love it.
Great. Thanks for the
Yes,
hype.
It deserves it. Absolutely. This has been ScapeChatz, finding our way home.
Jabba the Hutt. My name is Jabba the Hutt. My name is Job. Do
you think that on Star Wars themed football days they say 3, 2, 1, Jabba the Hutt hike?
Could you say that one more time clean so we can use it for the cold open?
Do you think during Star Wars themed football games they shout 3, 2, 1, Jabba the Hutt hike?